we are getting this church off the ground. And when I say getting this church off the ground, I honestly don't even like to use the word church that much. If you'll notice, our sign outside says just neighbors on it, because church sometimes, for some people, can sound a little bit like an institution kind of thing. And for us, I think it's a little bit more of a movement. You know, when the followers of Jesus were first starting, they weren't known as the church and they weren't known as Christians. It was the Greeks that later called them Christians. At the time, they were known as the Way. This movement, they were known as basically a movement called the Way. And I like to think of neighbors as that way too. We are a movement of kindness. We are trying to pave a way to where everybody feels like they are loved by God. I think that our world today is so conditional, and there's a lot of people that don't feel like they measure up or feel like that they can enter something that is called a church. And my prayer is that we build this into something so energetic and such a movement that people can't help but feel invited to this. And that when they come here, they feel like they're part of something. They feel like they're part of a community, a real loving community. And that's what my prayer is. And eventually, I think we will get around to it. I'm segueing into procrastination here. It's a big word. It's called procrastination. It's basically just putting off until the last minute before you have to do anything. Does anybody, show of hands, does anybody have things in their life that they put off until the last minute to do? Okay. So, some people were actually late to raise their hand. Just notice that. What are some of the things that you put off with? What are some of the things? Studying for tests. Do you pass the test? Well, then you don't need to study, so that's good. No, you really need to study. Parents are looking at me. I'm sorry. Anybody else got anything that they put off until the last minute? Laundry. I can smell that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Maybe some fabric softener. I'm not sure, but grocery shopping, dishes. What is it? Trash. Waking up. I can get that. For me, one of the things that I love to do is writing. One of my loves is I like to write. I've written things in the past. Sometimes I'll write things just for fun. Sometimes I'll share the things that I've written. But it's something that I absolutely get a lot of enjoyment out. But when it comes to the time that I actually have to sit down and write, I hear about these writers all the time that say, I write at the same time every day. I sit there and I discipline myself to write that. I've tried that, and whenever it comes time for me to actually write something, I'll do anything else. My house is the cleanest when I'm trying to write something. When I have a deadline to write something, my house is spotless because I will go around the house and do anything that I can to avoid doing something that I actually get some fulfillment out of, which is odd, isn't it? I mean, a lot of times, even like laundry and things, the things that we do once we're done doing them, we feel good about it. But it takes us forever to get it done or to prepare ourselves for it. Am I right? It's nutty. And I'm just grateful that during the time that I'm procrastinating about writing, that I'm actually doing something a little bit positive, like cleaning the house. I will tell you this, there are sometimes that I don't do anything positive. There are sometimes where I'll sit around and that's it. I'll just sit around and nothing gets done. But for the most part, I'd say that I'm doing something a little bit positive. The things that we enjoy in life are sometimes the things that we will avoid in life. And I wonder if that's human nature. I wonder if that's something that we just don't like to put the effort in, or it's, on occasion, it's laziness. But for the most part, it's a human nature thing that we will try to put off to the last minute, things that actually will give us satisfaction. I think Jesus knew this. He was surrounded by his disciples, but he was also surrounded by a lot of different people. Most of the time when you read about Jesus talking, it wasn't just to these 12 guys. It was to men, women, and children all around him. Those that were curious, those that were followers, and those that were questioning what he was about. And this is one of those times. And Jesus is getting a little bit more confrontational. He's starting to talk about be ready. Be ready. At that time, people had it into their minds constantly questioning, is this the end of the time? Is this the end of our days? Many people thought that the coming of Christ was the end of the world. Some of the apostles later would even write with such urgency that it's time to get your house in order because the end is happening. And this is usually where a pastor will get up here and warn you guys to just start behaving yourselves, knock off the shenanigans, and get things in line. I love saying the word shenanigans. That's one of my favorite things. Jesus is talking to all these people, and he doesn't tell them that the end of the times is not happening. He tells them just to be ready. He says if a servant is minding the house while the owner of the house is off having at a wedding party, that servant needs to be ready for him to come home at any given time. At any given moment, that servant better have the house in order when that owner comes back, or the servant will face harsh punishment. And this is where Peter steps in. Peter is the biggest doofus in the Bible, and I love that because it gives us permission to be doofuses. But he's always asking, does this involve me? At all. He's always making it about himself, and he turns to Jesus and he says, are you telling these guys this, or do I have to listen to this as well? Because I was making a sandwich. Peter made good sandwiches. Yeah, he invented the hoagie. It was always fish, but that's the bad thing because he was a fisherman. But Jesus turned to Peter and he said, the people that are in charge of the servants of the house, they need to be more ready than the servants themselves. If the person that is in charge of the servants of the house is not ready, the servants will not get blamed, but the person that is meant to be in charge of that will. Sometimes, I wonder what we are preparing for in our lives. What are we making ourselves ready for? And what are we procrastinating about? And what do we feel in our busy time when we are procrastinating about something? Let's take, for example, our faith. Something that we have in our lives. Many of us have a faith of some kind. We are either, we call ourselves Christians, or we are seeking or wondering, open to something. But we have a faith. But many times what we do with that faith is we kind of procrastinate about it. We'll do anything other than practice that faith. Sometimes it's a matter of not feeling the presence of God. Sometimes it's not going to church. Sometimes it's not. We will put our faith as a secondary thing in our life. And what I find that is so funny about that is what it seems like we're preparing ourselves for in life is the worst thing that could possibly happen to us. There's something going on in our world, and maybe it went on generations before me, or maybe I'm just noticing it in this generation, but we seem to be preparing continuously for the worst in our life. The worst that could happen to us. And we continually think of that we try to prepare ourselves for the worst in people that we meet. We have such a negative view of many things in our life. We've seen tragedies on TV. We have seen, great tragedies. We have seen people get harmed. We have been through harm in our lives. Many of us have been victims of things. We have struggled with things. But we continually prepare ourselves as if the owner of the house is going to come and kick our butts. Why do we do that? If I meet you, the first thing that I do is I put on my guard a little bit with you because I want to be ready. I'm not ready to trust. We hear things like, I'm not there yet, or you have to earn my trust. But many times while we're waiting to earn that trust, we are thinking the negative of you. You are having to prove to us that you're a positive influence and not a negative one, because our mind has already been a little bit made up that there is a negative. Why do we do that? Why is the one thing that we procrastinate in this world positivity? Why is that the one thing that we do? Because wouldn't you think that when something bad does happen, have you ever been, having a week and then suddenly something just, bam, comes into your life and it's either a tragedy happens or you lose your job or your mother-in-law comes over. I'm just kidding. I love my mother-in-law. She's a great person. It's just an old joke. If we're expecting the worst, if we continue with a negative attitude, when those things happen in our lives, it can harm us even harder than it does in a usual way. It can really injure us. It can knock us on our butts because we are expecting it. Because up until then, what we do, if we are actually the servants of this house, if we are meant to take care of this house, and we know that the owner of the house is going to be coming down that road anytime, but they're going to be coming, if we think that it's going to be bad news, that they're going to be coming to disembowel us or injure us in some way, disembowel, all right. That means that all the days until that person comes back, we're living within fear, with anxiety. And when we have fear, when we have anxiety, when we have insecurity, the natural ability of the natural behavior of human beings is to protect against that. And so we start looking at our neighbor. We start looking at people as enemies. We start thinking that someone is about to hurt us, and we put up our guard and we put up our walls and we do not communicate with people the way that we should. Because we're not practicing our faith. I know that we have people right in this room that are at various levels of faith. But I will tell you this. If your faith is in constantly negative stuff, or that you think that there's a being that's bigger than you, that hates you, or that is coming to harm you, I want you to really reevaluate your faith. Because that's not what faith is. Faith in our Christian world is following Jesus, who continuously said, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. And continuously said things like, I am with you always. Imagine if we practiced that. Instead of putting our faith on the back burner and replacing it with negativity, imagine if we actually stopped procrastinating our faith and actually started living that out every day. Imagine if every day we were reminded into ourselves, into our hearts and into our brains, that we are with a God that actually loves us. Exactly who we are. Imagine if we could wake up every morning, and say thank you. Thank you for being with me, God. Thank you for being part of my life, and thank you for loving me. Rather than waking up and saying, oh, hell, what else do I have to do today? Waking up was hard enough. Imagine if we could set aside the negativity, the busy work, and actually focus on the thing that we were meant to do, and that is to love and feel loved. Imagine if our faith was our priority in the day. Sometimes we make work our priority, and sometimes we make home life our priority. What if we put faith into all of those priorities? What if we carried our faith throughout our day into everything that we do, rather than putting it aside until it was needed? What if we practice our faith not because we had to, but because we actually wanted to? What if every day we were reminded that God walks with us and that God has our back and that Christ is actually an advocate? How would we treat our neighbor then? The more faith I have, the more secure I feel, the more I feel loved, the more I practice that faith, the more I see love in someone else, and you are less of a threat to me then. And so when I meet you, it's not about proving your trust to me. It's about sharing love. That's the movement that we are here at Neighbors for. That's why we are here. Not to just sing songs and to praise God, but to actually put that into practice, to put love into practice. Because when you say God and love, I believe that what you're saying is the same thing. Imagine if we lived with that every day. Every one of us does it. We leave here, and then we go out there. We might feel good while we're here, and then we go out there, and then we go to the store, and somebody's a jerk. And suddenly everything that we thought of in here is kept in here. That's why so many churches become these private clubs where people want to protect them, and they don't want to let other people in because they're happy here, but they don't take it out there. Imagine if we did. Imagine if what we did is we brought everything that we got in here and took it out there to when somebody's a jerk to us, we can still say that God loves them. And then maybe we can think about what's going on in their life. Maybe we can increase something, not procrastination, but another word called empathy. And we can start thinking about others more. And if that person is rude to us in the aisle, maybe they're having a hard day. Maybe we can give them the benefit of the doubt rather than protect ourselves against a negative. Faith in God is faith in love. May we practice that.